Hey folks, Sylvia's here. I'm here on FDR. We are here in Port Hope, north of Port Hope, I should say. This is the Port Hope Swamp Troll Cave. That's where I'll be hunting today while I talk politics and stuff. A lot more swamp trolls than I remember. So today I wanted to talk about God, politics are all, like, especially in America these days, like, everything's kind of like a charged issue, but this is, I think, a charged issue. So I want to talk about abortion today. Like, whether or not it should be legal, whether or not it should be legal in certain circumstances, whether or not it should be completely illegal, whether or not it should be illegal in certain circumstances. And we're going to kind of hit on a couple of topics there. So the first thing, though, is before I even get into that, I want to tell you what my opinion is on the topic and what I think my friend's opinion is on the topic, because I think he has a pretty solid opinion. Not solid necessarily, but interesting. So, like, a good ability when you're, like, debating things is the ability to debate a topic that you don't necessarily agree with. Because that shows your, like, you know, cognitive thinking abilities and reasoning abilities and stuff like that. So just while, like, I could be for or against something doesn't necessarily mean I can't debate the opposite point of view. So I do want to tell you what my stance is first, just so that you know where I'm coming from. So in my personal perspective, I have no problems with abortion. I just don't. Here's my general thought processes, okay? I generally support giving people as many options as possible, unless there's some kind of harm that comes with the possibilities. So, like, for on the topic of, like, gay marriage, something that I'm for gay marriage because I'd rather just let gay people do whatever they want, unless there's some kind, like, unless gay marriage increases, like, murder rates or decreases, like, you know, tax income or something like that. Unless there's an actual real harm to the topic, I support just letting people do whatever they want. So there's no, like, you know, no real harm done by allowing abortion. Besides, people will say, like, you know, the fact that you're killing humans. And on that topic, my opinion is basically I don't care. Like, I don't view human life as, like, the most valuable thing in the universe. You know, like, alright, yeah, like, we can argue that abortion is killing, like, the unborn baby, but if we argue that, I still don't care, because, like, a human life that has made no achievements or accomplishments is, in my mind, just as valuable as a, like, cow's life. And we humans have no problems killing massive amounts of animals because they taste delicious. Ironically, most of the people that fall on the anti-abortion thing tend to be, like, the kind of more rural-ishy conservative Republicans, the type of people that are also perfectly okay with basically recreational hunting. So while these people are championing that all life is incredibly valuable, on their weekends they go out there with guns to shoot deer and birds just because it's fun. Don't get me wrong. I'm pretty confident, I've never gone hunting, but I'm pretty confident that is probably really fun. Like, don't get me wrong. Hunting is probably really fun. Like, using a really powerful weapon to just blast things is probably really great. But that's my point on what I'm trying to make about, like, the whole sanctity of life kind of thing. Obviously, they don't think life is all that sanctified, because otherwise they wouldn't just be going killing it for fun. So, like, a life that has, you know, accomplished things has value, obviously. Like, a person who has, you know, already gone through school, entered society, has, you know, proven to be a functioning member of society, and has accomplished things, even if those things are relatively minor. That person's life has value. But, like, an unborn baby, because it's unborn, has not accomplished anything. So, like, on my mind scale, an unborn child has the same value, the same, like, tangible value as a deer or as a cow or as a, you know, a pig or whatever. And, like, killing that for your own convenience, basically, to me at least, is just as valid. I know that sounded terrible, but that's basically what my opinion is that I literally just don't care. If people want to have abortions, that's fine by me. Do whatever you want, folks. Now, my friend, though, he has the opposite opinion, and his opinion is he is against abortion because in his mind, again, this isn't like a moral opinion of his or anything like this. In his mind, there's always going to be a debate over like where it's okay to still perform an abortion and under which circumstances. So like yeah, we have like the term called like late term abortions and stuff like that, which is only acceptable in like certain circumstances. But his was a more basic problem where he was like, at some point, the baby does become alive and like its own separate thing. Like you know when the like egg cell first attaches to the wall of the uterus, most people would say that that's not necessarily its separate entity at that point. So there'll always be debate over at what point in the pregnancy is the fetus considered its own separate being. And because people obviously grow and develop at different rates, no two fetuses would be like exactly the same. And he said since there will always be debate, which means there's always going to be like uncertainty, and he doesn't like that uncertainty and that like ambiguity of the situation, he just says that it should always be illegal because that's the only way you can be sure. So I just thought those were two, my opinion and his opinion, were both worth mentioning. So anyway, though, now let's get down into the actual meat of this topic. So the first thing is, you know, obviously, should abortion be legal? And actually, there's a really simple and clear answer to this question. This is not a question that's up for debate. Should abortion be legal? The answer is yes. It should be. Really simple. Here's why. All right. In America, we have, you know, most Americans would vaguely understand this concept. I don't know, probably foreigners probably understand it even better than most Americans. We have what we call like the separation of powers. We also have the separation of church and state, but let's talk about the separation of powers first. So in the separation of powers, there is our three branches of our government: our legislative branch, our executive branch, and our judicial branch. Basically, the idea is that they all work in tandem to like accomplish, you know, governing. But they also function as checks and balances against each other. So, like the legislative branch writes laws, the executive branch enforces or implements those laws, and the judicial branch determines the validity of those laws. Basically, I'm overgeneralizing and simplifying, but basically that's how it works. So our legislative branch is Congress and the Senate. Also, it's made a whole lot more complicated by the fact that we have like local laws and state laws and all that jazz. But ignore that for the moment. So yeah, we've got this system. So basically, though, the thing I want to talk about is the judicial branch. And the judicial branch is this huge, like multiple layer, like pyramid scheme-esque type thing where it's like got a clear hierarchy. So there's like lower scale courts and multiple lower scale courts report to one single higher one, and then that one's got multiple higher ones that report to another higher one, and we move all the way up. So like there might be like a million lowest scale courts, and then above them is the second lowest ones, and each one of those is responsible for three of the lowest ones, and then repeat that process going all the way up. So at the top of that pyramid, we have what's called like the Supreme Court of the United States. A lot of Americans think that the Supreme Court always has 9 justices. That's not true. The amount of justices on the Supreme Court are largely at the whims of Congress. Congress and the Senate can pass like laws telling how many people on it. For most of like recent, you know, history, it's been 9 justices. At the moment, it's 8 because one of them has recently died. I don't think necessarily that there has to be a 9th. A like constitutional law scholar would obviously be able to answer that question better than I can. But yeah, so we have the Supreme Court. Right now, there's 8 of them because one of them is dead. And the way the Supreme Court works is the Supreme Court is the final say on a legal aspect. Not everything goes to the Supreme Court. If a lower court releases a judgment and the people are okay with that, it stays there. Sometimes it can get appealed and it goes to a higher court, and it can get appealed again and it can go to a higher court again, and we can keep repeating that process, and eventually it could end up at the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court doesn't actually have to listen to everything. So the Supreme Court can go, like, you can appeal up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court can go, yeah, I'm not feeling this one. For whatever reason. And if you appeal up to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court doesn't want to hear your case, what happens is whatever the lower court ruling was ends up just standing. So, like, I don't know. I sue the state of Pennsylvania for the right to wear invisible clothes. The state of Pennsylvania says no. I appeal to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says no. So what the Pennsylvania highest court said stands, which is, in this case, no. So, point here, though, is the Supreme Court is the, like, absolute highest authority in the United States. What the Supreme Court says goes. And in regards to the abortion debate, there was a major case called Roe versus Wade, where the Supreme Court said, yeah, abortion's legal. So, right there you have your answer. The highest court in the United States of America, with its power granted through the Constitution, has said, this is a legal thing, and that's really all there is to it. Like, the absolute highest authority said it was. Now, you can disagree with that, but you're not a Supreme Court justice. You're not a legal expert. You're not a, constitutional scholar, so your opinion's sort of invalid. But even if you were one of those things, the Supreme Court still is a majority rule type situation. I don't remember exactly what the ruling on Roe versus Wade was, but the fact of the matter is the majority of the Supreme Court was like, abortion's legal. So, abortion's legal. Get over it. If you don't like it, Canada's accepting applications. Mexico's accepting applications. Go elsewhere. That's how democracy works. Like, that's how our system has worked for the 250 some odd years that it has been in existence. If you don't like the results, well, I mean, kind of suck it up, because that's not how democracy works. Like, you don't get to implement your will 100% of the time. That's how dictatorships work. So like I said, it's a really simple thing. Should abortion be legal? The answer is yes, because the Supreme Court, the thing that determines whether or not it's illegal or legal, should abortion be legal is what I meant to say, determined that abortion is in fact legal. So there you go. Really simple thing. Anything, like, everybody that continues to fight that is just refusing to admit that they lost. It's like the Germans continuing to fight after World War II, even though Hitler was dead, even though Berlin was captured. It's just individual German soldiers refusing to admit that they lost and continuing, like, guerrilla actions and stuff like that. Incidentally, a group of people that still do that are like the Taliban and stuff like that, and everybody hates them. So the people that are, like, protesting abortion and are still, like, all anti-abortion, they're like the Taliban, hiding in caves, refusing to admit that they lost, hoping that they can just annoy people enough to make a difference. Now, I mean, in the case of the Viet Cong and the Vietnam War, sadly that worked. So, I mean, that's not to say that necessarily they won't eventually win, but just keep in mind that that's what they are. Like, alright. That's the situation we have. Now, so that was the simple of, like, should abortion be legal kind of thing. Now I'm going to kind of look at some of the arguments for and against it, because this is where the actual meat of the topic is. So basically, we've got your pro-choice people and your pro-life people. Your pro-choice people say that it's like the woman's choice. It's the woman's body. She gets to choose whether or not she wants to have a baby, yada, yada, yada. And then we have the pro-life people who are like, life is sacred, blah, 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 blah. Now, the thing that most of the anti-abortion argument comes down to is a, like, religious aspect. So before I get into that, I kind of want to say something, like, just generalized, okay? When your opinion of a topic is based off of your faith, or your beliefs, or your religion, it's automatically invalid. Just automatically 100% invalid. I know that's rough because people, like, take their faiths really seriously and stuff like that, but that's just how it is. Because you have to understand that while you hold your beliefs really like strong to your heart, and you're 100% positive that everything written in the Bible is 100% true and all that, I don't believe that, and a lot of other people don't believe that. Even other people in your religion don't believe that the Bible is 100% true. And the people that don't believe that look upon your beliefs with the same kind of horror that you look upon the beliefs of, like, the Church of Satan or the Church of Scientology or the Church of the Giant Flying Spaghetti Monster or whatever that church is called and stuff like that. It's an appalled, like, horrifying, like, you don't really believe that seriously kind of look. There's nothing to stop me from creating the Church of Silvius, where the Church of Silvius' main tenet is everybody has to agree with Silvius always because he's the Word of God, and anybody who doesn't agree with me and also who doesn't bow down to me automatically has to be punched in the face by Silvius. Like, there's nothing to stop me from making that religion. So, when you're like, I have no facts to back up my argument. It's based entirely off of faith. It's not even that's not an argument that you can make. That's not an argument I can fight against either. Because when we debate a topic, we discuss, like, we basically are discussing facts. And opinions do fit into a debate to a certain extent, but basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to argue the facts of a matter. And when your opinion is, well, I believe this, there's no facts. I can't dispute your facts. I can't bring up counter arguments because there's no argument. You're just saying something. Like, it's the same thing like when you're discussing with, like, a person with a conspiracy theory. Granted, most people that believe in conspiracy theories don't actually think that they're believing in a conspiracy theory. They think that they're the only person that saw through the grand deception and yada yada yada. But for example, there's people that exist in this world that still think the world is flat. It's called the Flat Earth Society. If any of my viewers believe that the world is still flat, I apologize. I thought the Flat Earth Society was a pretty safe thing to kind of make fun of here. If you're a Flat Earth Society person, I don't care, actually. Moving on. Like, the people that believe in that just dispute all the evidence because they believe that they know the truth. So you can't argue with them. You can show them evidence otherwise, and they go, well, I don't believe that evidence. I have faith that the world is flat. That's not you can't debate them. You can debate another person, and you can show the evidence, and that other person can try to pull out evidence that shows that the world is, in fact, flat. And that's how you can have a debate. But against the people that believe in the conspiracy theory, you've got nothing. You can't beat them. So when your argument is like, well, God told me, the Bible says, my belief is, my faith tells me, my religion tells me, it's automatically an invalid argument. Because it can't be argued with. Now, moving on then. We can bring up reasons why abortion should be against the rules. So one of the things, most of the things people say is like basically the sanctity of life kind of thing. And that is largely an opinion. Is life especially sacred? Is human life, I guess I should say, especially sacred? Because that's really the underlying assumption here. Not that all life is sacred, just that human life is particularly sacred. Okay. That's really only an opinion topic, and in my opinion, no, it's not. In other people's opinion, yes, it is. In other people's opinion, yes, it is, but the life of the mother is also sacred, and so on. So, I mean, like, that's not really a topic we can debate either. Pro-life people like to point out a lot of statistics about that abortion causes increased in, like, breast cancer and cervical cancer. And the fact of the matter is that the vast majority of research onto these topics proves that's not true. And I hate to say this because this is like an emotional topic for people, but the only doctors that say that, like, yeah, abortion will cause increased breast cancer chances are religious doctors who aren't an unbiased topic. So, like, yeah, if your religion is telling you that abortion is the worst thing in the world because it's killing unborn, defenseless babies, and then you come out with a paper saying that, yeah, it causes breast cancer, I'm going to just automatically doubt what you're saying. So yeah, the vast majority of research and science on this topic says that no, abortion does not cause any noticeable risk in cancer chances. It doesn't increase depression, besides the fact that, like, you know, the whole situation with, like, having to get an abortion is very stressful on a woman. So, like, yeah, I can see that causing depression. But that's not so much the abortion procedure itself. That's a woman, like, being torn over the choice of whether or not she should abort this baby, and then also having a whole bunch of people telling her that she's a horrible human being for doing it. That's what that is. So yeah, there's no medical stuff. People like to talk about, well, like, does the fetus feel pain? Again, the same situation is the vast majority of the research documents show that it doesn't. The vast majority of the research shows that, no, the fetus doesn't really feel pain. So again, like, moot point. The research that, like, or the research from researchers who does show that it does feel pain is tainted because, you know, they're getting, like, their funding from the Foundation of Pro-Life Movement, or the like, American Catholic Bishops Association is the one funding their research, which makes them not necessarily an unbiased source. People like to talk about the that, like, the people getting abortions are, like, wild party girls, and it's a lack of responsibility, and yada yada yada. But again, see, here's the thing, like, I'm sure, because there's a human that does everything, I'm sure there's somebody there that just particularly loves getting abortions and just thinks abortions are fantastic and tries to get as many as they can. That person's a scumbag. Don't get me wrong. Likewise, I'm sure there's a select few people that are like, oh man, I can go out to, like, wild drug-filled orgies because if anything happens, I can just get an abortion afterwards. But the vast majority of people aren't partaking in risky behavior because they know abortion is there to save them. The vast majority of people that perform risky behaviors probably are on birth control in the first place. But the argument, obviously, is the assumption that because abortion is an option, people would partake in risky, stupid behavior that they wouldn't participate in or partake in otherwise, because they know that there's the safety net of abortion behind them. Has anybody who has ever done something stupid, or dealt with somebody who does something stupid often enough, you'll know that that's not how that works. Doing something stupid is all about not paying attention to the consequences while you're doing it. Not realizing that you have an out afterwards. If abortion was made unavailable to the stupid people that go out to, like, you know, drunken orgies and then get pregnant afterwards, it wouldn't mean that they'd stop going to those orgies. It would just mean that there's a whole bunch of people that got pregnant and now having kids, while they're stupid idiots that go out to drunken orgies. They're the worst type of people to be having kids because they clearly lack the responsibility and the maturity to not be an idiot. So if you're okay with all of those people going out to have kids, yeah, that's great. Like, you know, teenagers going to, like, prom and then all getting drunk and, you know, pregnant or something like that is a great approach. I mean, like, that's definitely what people would want. Obviously, yeah, great. All right. So, like, decreasing abortion, or, like, removing abortion from the equation isn't going to make that, like, risky behavior go away. I mean, it might temporarily, obviously, because, like, nobody's going to go to drunken orgies while they're currently pregnant. And I guess while, you know, after they just gave birth, their life is basically ruined, and they probably don't have the money or the time to go to drunken orgies. So, I mean, they probably are going to stop for a short period of time. But the important thing is that all that's doing is creating a massive influx of people who are probably, like, in poverty and not well educated. I mean, and if that's the goal, I mean, I guess that's one way to do that. So, I mean, like, those are kind of like the basic arguments, that it's, like, immoral, it's against their religion, it would cause breast cancer. Like most of that stuff is largely invalid. So now let's move on to some of the like. Well, I mean, there's not. I mean, the pros to abortion are pretty obvious. That I don't even feel the need to kind of like talk about them. Basically, though, they prevent people from having kids that they don't want, which I feel like is obvious. I don't like to talk about my own like personal situations too often, especially in these types of videos. But like, my mom specifically got pregnant with me while she was still in high school. My birthday is like 2 weeks after hers, like a week and a half after hers. And she had just turned 18 when I was born. So she was 17 when she got pregnant with me. And she did that because she thought having a baby would be fun. Like, this was, like the 70s. They were still kind of pushing that, like, motherhood is a woman's duty and that it's great and babies are awesome. And, women should just go and have babies all the time. And she thought, yeah, that sounds great. I would love to be a mom. It'll be so fun. And then, the harsh reality of the situation is that, like, babies sort of suck. And raising a child also sort of sucks. And caring for a baby is incredibly stressful and time-consuming, and it sucks. And then it also takes 18 years. So, like, in my mom's case, instead of, like, going to parties and having fun with her friends and stuff like that, she had to take care of me, the baby. Now, luckily for my mom, she had a huge extended family, several sisters, my aunts, and my grandmother and stuff like that, who were able to basically carry 99% of the slack for my mom. So while my mom was a ragingly incompetent parent at the beginning and was like wholly unprepared for the situation, other people were there to make sure I didn't die. And to make sure that it didn't completely destroy my mom's life. She had a foundation there that was allowing her to still exist and not have to go live in an incredibly small apartment, and it prevented her from ruining her life, in other words. It's worth mentioning, though, that one of my aunts was when she found out my mom was pregnant, she was like, have you considered an abortion? Because you're woefully unprepared to have a deal with a child right now. And she didn't want to because I hadn't been born at that point, obviously, because abortion was still on the table. If the baby has been born, it's too late for abortion. Just throwing that out there for anybody who didn't realize that. At that point, though, my mom was still in the it'll be so fun moment. So no, she didn't want to have an abortion. But one of my aunts was definitely you should probably consider it because you're very unprepared and unqualified to be dealing with this. But ultimately, there I am. And yeah, for the entirety of my life, my mom was not a good parent. She was never really prepared to do the whole thing, and by the time she got her act into gear, it was kind of too late. There was too many annoying memories of me ruining things for her. Too many struggles that it had existed for her to just forget it all. And then the happy fun baby times that she was expecting were already over by the time she got her act into gear. And I was I had developed into a person that she didn't like at that point. So on that extent, it was already too late for her. But I bring this up because that's the kind of person that would be having a whole bunch of children if abortion wasn't an option. Yeah, abortion was an option. She decided to have me anyway. But my life is kind of severely damaged by the fact that my mom sucked at being a parent and wasn't prepared for it. So every day I exist, I have to deal with the fact that my foundation was a wreck because my mom was a bad parent and shouldn't have had me. And I have it generally pretty easy. Other people are addicted to heroin or something and are having babies. Just in the news recently, there was some local police force that got called to a car driving erratically, and it was a heroin overdose of the man and the woman in the front seat, and they released the pictures on Facebook. So it's this man with his head leaning back and his mouth open in the front seat, and the woman in the passenger seat slumped over, while there's a 4-year-old child crying in the background. Yeah, whoever's child that was, I don't know if it was the man's or the woman's, probably should have aborted that child. Now, I will also kind of actually go into a topic real quick on as a argument against abortion. People say, well, there's always adoption. Yeah, there is always adoption, but adoption isn't like a simple process where you're just like, I don't want this anymore, and then some wonderful family swoops out of nowhere and picks it up and goes, oh, don't worry, I'll take care of it. That's not how adoption works. um, Adoption takes an exceedingly long amount of time, and in that time, the child either stays with the parents or goes into a foster home. And if anybody has ever been in the foster home situation in most countries, it's not really good. I mean, it's better than just like throwing children on the side of the street, but it's not really conductive to raising children to be, functioning members of society. It's kind of an inductive system for raising children into being like, crazy criminals and whatnot. So yeah, it's not a great system. It's just not a great system all around. And also, like the science of giving birth to a baby rewires part of a person's brain, basically. Um, this is like an interesting topic, and I don't have the like obvious scientific knowledge to discuss it. But basically, through like massive hormone changes and endorphin like dumps and stuff like that, having a baby rewires a woman's brain so that she like loves that thing. Where normally you would be like, "Wow, this thing sucks. Can we stick it in a trash can?" Because certain people do that. Um, so saying to that person while their brain is being rewired to like unconditionally love this massive screaming poop, to just give it up to somebody else is really rough. That is also like incredibly stressful for the person, and also pretty stressful for the child too. When later on it realizes its parents, if they're good parents, its foster parents, I should say, aren't its real parents. So like that's not really a good approach for anybody either. The thing is though, like abortion also, I mean like adoption means you have to carry that pregnancy for 9 months. I mean, I guess at the point where abortion would be an option, you've already been carrying it for a while, but still, like, you have to go through the whole process of pregnancy. Like, if you're incredibly poor and you get pregnant, you can't afford to, like, just stop working your 2 jobs or something like that, and then have all the medical expenses that come with a pregnancy. And that's if there's no complications. Like, if you need a C-section, that's extra money. If there's some kind of complication, that's extra money. If the baby's premature, that's extra money. If you have like a major problem, that's extra money, and that also means you're out of work even longer. Um, like, so this is like a tough situation for people, and abortion is just adoption isn't the same thing. Like, if the end goal is to just not raise a child and nothing else matters, then yeah, okay, I guess that sort of counts. But the reality is that there's more to it than just not raising a child. There's expenses, there's time spent, and things like that. Anybody who hasn't been pregnant or hasn't spent a large amount of time with a pregnant person will know, or won't know, but pregnancy is awful. Like, my mom was pregnant with my like half little sister, I guess, while I was still in high school, and I did like everything in my power to avoid her. Well, I mean, I kind of did everything in my power to avoid my mom in the first place, but I did everything beyond that to avoid her while she was pregnant. So like, I barely had to deal with her, and it was like 5 months of a nightmare, and I wasn't even the one that was pregnant. So I mean, like, you gotta understand that it's not like, I think a lot of people are like, oh, just put it up for abortion, and they say that while having no understanding of the complexities of this situation. Like, it's not that simple that you can just be like, oh, I'll just put it up for adoption. It'll be easy. Now, the other thing that always has kind of irritated me about the whole abortion topic is the people that are like very anti-abortion, the very strongly pro-life group. They generally tend to be, and I always hesitate to make generalizations, but they generally tend to be, they fall into this very specific, like, Republican category. And I hit on Republicans a lot, and I don't mean to, because, like, I do agree with a lot of their like opinions on a lot of things, but one of the issues I have with this abortion topic is like if abortion was just a standalone thing, I could see it. But like Republicans hate Planned Parenthood because it does abortions, obviously. But Planned Parenthood also provides birth control and education to women. Um, and Republicans are generally pretty anti on the birth control topic too, which would be fine by itself, but like you can't on one hand say like, yeah, abortion is illegal, anybody that gets abortion is a terrible human being, abortion shouldn't be allowed, and then go, except we're also going to make every step possible to make it harder for women to not need abortions. Like, so we're going to take away the sexual education from school because we don't want that in schools. um, we don't want women to be like informed about their choices. We want it to be as confusing as possible so that more women get pregnant while they're stupid, basically, and woefully unprepared to deal with their children. And then we're going to also disallow their from getting abortion. We're also going to make it harder for them to get their hands on, birth control because, again, we want there to be as many pregnant women as possible that then can't get abortions because that's the goal we're aiming for, apparently. Generally, too, Republicans tend to be pretty, like, anti-welfare and stuff like that. So, like, the women who end up getting pregnant and need all these additional services find these additional services not available. So, like, if the Republicans were just like, yeah, abortion is bad, we should have no abortion, but let's make it so that women don't need abortion. Let's make sure that they're educated. Let's make sure birth control is available. And then after all of those things, if they fail. So the women, no birth control is 100%. Sometimes the pill doesn't work. Sometimes condoms rip. So, all right, the birth control fails after we made it cheaply available. We didn't, like, stigmatize it or anything like that. The birth control still failed. The woman was educated. She knew what she was supposed to be doing, and, still happened. Okay. So now we have, like, an unwed woman who's, relatively poor, is young, doesn't have, like, a house or anything, doesn't have, like, resources to call upon. So instead, we would have, like, support programs for her. Like food stamps and WIC and things like that. WIC is Women's Infant and Children, by the way. It's like it's a program to get food for like babies and parents and stuff like that. It's a very stringent program, by the way. And if you ever worked at a grocery store that accepts WIC, you'll know how much of a hassle it is because of how stringent it is. So I mean, like the point though is that you would provide the support necessary after this woman got pregnant. But Republicans are against all of those things. They're against like welfare and food stamps and WIC and like these different tax credits and stuff like that. Well, I mean, I guess they're for the tax credits because they're all about low taxes, but they're generally against the things that would be perceived as welfare and stuff like that. They're against the like education and the birth control and all that stuff. So you have people that like don't really understand what their situation is. You have them, they can't get their hands on birth control because the Republicans hide that from them. Then they can't get an abortion, and then when they have the baby, there's like no support there. We've all heard the thing like welfare moms or welfare queens and stuff like that, where the perceived idea is that there's like some woman that mass produces babies so that she can get like government funded like checks and stuff like that. Except that doesn't actually happen. That's like a myth, or it happened once, and then it was like the laws were rectified so it doesn't happen again. But that's what like Republicans are afraid of. If there's anybody that should be getting abortions, it's the woman who's mass producing babies to get additional money from the state. And that's kind of always been the problem I had with the whole thing, like that like stunning level of hypocrisy that comes from the Republicans on that level. Which, I mean, like, don't get me wrong, like, Democrats have their own little levels of hypocrisy and stuff like that. Like, definitely don't get me wrong on that topic. But, like, it was always, like, a shocking thing to see. That's how, like, the Republicans, like, looked at that situation. Like, that just, like, casual, like, we're hitting on all these topics at once. And I never really understood it, because, like, if you were truly, like, abortion is terrible, you think you would do everything to prevent the situation where abortion comes in. Instead, though, they usually say things like you need to be responsible for your actions. I mean, like, that would be cool if it was like you were doing, like, the kind of stuff that gets you on Fail Army, basically. Shout out to Fail Army. if you're like ramping motorcycles off of things and you break your leg, being responsible for those actions, yeah, that's fine. Except the problem is that like when you went to your drunken orgy and got pregnant, you're responsible for your actions, but you're not responsible for that child's actions any longer. Like now you're bringing a new life into this world in a horrible situation because you weren't responsible for your actions. So I mean, like there is something to say like, well, you shouldn't have shoplifted from Walmart. Now you have to pay the fine or go to jail. Well, you shouldn't have tried to ramp off of that, parking garage with a motorized scooter. Now you have to deal with the fact that you're paralyzed. Like, yeah, I mean, like there's a certain extent of that, but that only works when you personally are the only person dealing with the consequences, and not like this child that didn't have any say in the matter. And then the school district when it needs to deal with the fact that you're a crappy parent and your child is a hyperactive like piece of crap. And then society later on when, well, I mean society right then when it basically has to support you and your child anyway. Because as much as Republicans aren't a big fan of like welfare and stuff like that, I'm pretty confident they have enough like basic decency to be like, well, we shouldn't let parents with infant children starve to death. So, like, no matter how much they might be against the welfare thing, they're still going to keep the parent and the child alive. Yeah. So like money is still going to be spent, and then later on when that child is like, I mean, like, again, like look at looking at my situation, like my mom kind of screwed up raising me, and here I am making YouTube videos. Like not exactly the ideal life. I'm sure like other people have it worse for me, like like my two cousins are probably kind of screwed with life too, and are probably going to be on some kind of like government assistance for the rest of their lives and stuff like that. So I mean, it's a crappy situation for everybody involved. But like, if just like if either one of us was aborted, it would probably have been best for the world. How terrible of a comment is that? But yeah, I mean that's just the way it is. So I don't know. It's always been this really strange topic to me, where I didn't understand like I don't know. It's just that like level of hypocrisy that always kind of like shocked me. The like, nope, abortion's wrong, and so are the things that would prevent you from needing one. Like I don't get it. I just don't get it. And then and another topic I kind of want to hit on too, because we're almost done with this now, is actually I have two topics. So like in an interview a while back, Donald Trump commented that he thought women who got abortion should be like punished or something like that. And everybody immediately like denounced him and was like, "That's terrible. How could you say that?" In reality, though, that makes sense because like here's the thing, right? Let's say I have a person that I don't like. Doesn't matter who. Obviously, not like a person like I personally know or something like that. All right, and I want to kill this person, except I don't want to do it myself. So I hire an assassin / hitman or whatever. And then I get caught. I'm legally responsible. I mean, here in the United States, I'm pretty sure we have like a specific name for that specific crime. So it's not like I didn't commit murder. I committed like murder for hire, I think it's called. So like, yeah, obviously the hitman who killed this person goes to jail. And he gets charged with murder and probably some other things too. But I get charged for like murder for hire or whatnot. I'm legally responsible for hiring somebody to kill a person. So if abortion was illegal, the doctor in that sense, or the abortion provider or whatever, is basically taking the role of the hitman, whereas the woman who's paying this doctor to kill the unborn baby is taking the role of the person hiring the hitman. If the person hiring a hitman is legally responsible, then the person... I'm sorry, if the person hiring the hitman is legally responsible, then the person hiring the doctor is also legally responsible. So what Donald Trump said there actually makes an enormous amount of sense. Like, the woman should be prosecuted, but the Republicans are trying to push this idea that, like, the woman being forced into an abortion is, like, this victim. And it doesn't work so well. And it hurts that argument to then be like, well, I mean, we should charge her for attempted murder. But in reality, that's kind of the situation. And then the other thing I want to hit on, too, is, so, like, at the beginning of this video, I said abortion is legal because the Supreme Court said it's legal. Since then, we've seen a lot of Republican-controlled, like, states, like, with Republican governors. And Republican, like, state legislators, too, passing restrictive anti-abortion laws. I'm actually going into the smuggler cave, and I don't want to do that. Basically, what's happening is they're trying to figure out other ways to undermine Roe versus Wade, which is the Supreme Court decision that legalized abortion. To put it in another way, like, let's say the Supreme Court passes a law that says it's okay to play Tibia. Like, playing Tibia isn't against the law. So now the state governments are trying to go like, okay, well, the Supreme Court said it's okay to play Tibia, but let's try to make a law that makes it impossible for computers to run Tibia. And then when that fails, they try to put, like, restrictions and stuff like that. So we're seeing a whole bunch of things where, like, Texas was in the news because they passed a law that said, like, abortion clinics needed to have admitting privileges at a hospital within a certain distance of them. And they also said that abortion clinics needed to, like, meet requirements to be, like, a certain level of surgical center themselves. When they passed this off under the guise of, like, well, it's to ensure the health of women. This is the same kind of situation that I talked about when I was doing my video on, like, the voter ID laws. Basically, they're passing a law to prevent something that's happening, and they're making up excuses for why that law is necessary and not purely designed to prevent abortion. Most abortions aren't done surgically. They're done with, like, basically through, like, pills. So most abortion clinics don't need the like, the strenuous requirements to be considered a surgical center. They talk about, like, admitting privileges in the hospital, but, like, 95% of all complications with an abortion happen later on when the person would be at home. They wouldn't be at the abortion clinic where it would need admitting things. They'd be at home and be like, oh, I'm having horrible stomach pains. They would call an ambulance, which is what, like, the center would say. So, like, most of those requirements are irrelevant and are just, like, a thinly veiled attempt to remove abortion. Which comes to that whole, like, at the beginning of this video, I was talking about how, like, the people arguing this topic are basically the Taliban. It's this, like, underground guerrilla warfare that they're fighting to fight this lost cause. Well, I don't want to say it's a lost cause, but a war that they've already lost. So, I mean, it's not necessarily a lost cause, but it's a war that has already had a conclusion, and they're refusing to admit it. So we see these restrictive things, waiting limits on abortion, like, you had to get the ultrasound showing the baby, and the doctor had to, like, point it out to you. Because, you know, when a woman is, like, torn up about the fact that she has to get an abortion, for whatever reasons, and, like, there's a lot of reasons why a woman could want to have an abortion besides just the fact that, like, yeah, being a parent doesn't sound fun. There could be health concerns, there's money concerns. I mean, could you imagine you're pregnant? I guess guys can't really imagine this well, but you're pregnant, you can't afford it, you know that. You know that the father isn't going to be able to support you or anything like that. Maybe you don't even know who the father is. You know that having this baby is going to, like, ruin your life, so you know, you man up, you muscle it up, and you're like, all right, I'm going to go have to get an abortion. And then you go to the abortion, and the doctor has to show you an ultrasound and be like, this is your baby's head that you're about to murder. This is its little beating heart that you're about to murder. I mean, like, you wonder why, like, you know, they might be depressed afterwards. And then so, like, all these clinics in Texas had to close because of all these requirements. So now, like, you know, it's even harder to get abortions because the clinics were forced to close. And then the same thing, then we've got the anti-abortion protesters standing outside in front of the clinics, like, yelling at women that they're, like, baby murderers and stuff like that. Like, yeah, that's some human, like, decency right there, people. Like, you're so concerned about the Bible telling you to be a good person and, like, the sanctity of life that you're going to berate and, like, emotionally scar, like, immature people that are coming in to make a difficult decision. Like, good job. You're definitely showing the sanctity of life right there. I can definitely feel the, like, goodness bubbling out of your soul as you scream at a scared, like, young woman. Good job. Good job. And, you know, again, you're definitely, like, protecting the sanctity of life also when you, like, firebomb abortion clinics or murder the doctors. Like, because, like, that doctor definitely didn't have a family. Like, he was just, like, spawned from Satan directly out of hell, right? Like, no, he definitely had, like, parents. He definitely had friends. He definitely had, like, you know, sisters. Probably was married, had kids of his own. And, you know, you, like, murdered him in his church. Good job. Good job. Sanctity of life right there. I don't know. So that's my my take on the abortion topic. Like, the an argument could be made, although I don't think a good argument could be made. But the people that are just, like, I mean, it's rough because, like, I don't want to insult a person's, like, deeply held beliefs and stuff like that, but sometimes a person's deeply held beliefs are stupid. And they kind of, like, deserve being made fun of. Like, I don't know. Anyway, so that was my my take on the whole abortion topic, people. So, obviously, I'm for abortion. I'm for abortion for the reasons I said at the beginning of this video. However, I'm strenuously anti-abortion. Oop, wrong ladder. Like, I strongly dislike the people that are strongly anti-abortion because I think they're stupid. I get that they think it's, like, an important topic, but, like, their ways of handling it are just awful. Just completely 100% awful. Down from the, like, hypocrisy of being like, no abortion, but I'm also going to make it harder for you to avoid abortions, to the horribleness of, like, standing in front of the clinic screaming at people, to the hypocrisy of being like, well, we won't try the women even though they're hiring hitmen to kill unborn babies. Just the whole topic is terrible. Just the whole topic. And then on top of everything else is we have the answer. The Supreme Court has spoken. Abortion is legal. Deal with it. Alright, people, that's it for me. Like, favorite, comment, subscribe, check me on Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, and let me know how much you disagree with what I had to say.